Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong.
I went Birds, Chris. It's probably too chilly out. I'm probably too chilly.
John McMullen said it's going to be one of two things, and it's neither.
Neither.
He either had you in the newsroom or outside. He's coming to us via, is that the bathroom you're in? Did you take the PC into the bathroom? You got a nice little mirror in the background. Where you at, Franklin?
So I do some of my best thinking in there, but unfortunately, it's not there. I'm in one of the offices, another room. I'm trying to try a different room today. The allergies are kicking my butt right now. So I'm like,
really?
let's do this a little bit. So I went to third pitch, and to try to go all speed. It worked, I guess. Hey, it worked.
Looks nice. Looks fine. Just we tried to guess where you came on, and we struck out badly. So your third pitch worked.
Yes.
Eagles are 2-0. They haven't been a wow-inspiring 2-0, and why isn't this going this way as compared to what it was kind of 2-0? You worried at all? All right, 2-0, but you beat a Patriot team who didn't make the playoffs. You beat a Viking team who let a whole bunch of good guys walk out the door, even though they won 13 games last year. You have to keep it in the context of who did you go 2-0 against. Where are you at with the Birds 2 games in?
I'm not worried so much right now. After looking, I seem like I felt like watch that game over and over a lot. Like the all 22 a lot. There's a lot of stuff that you see where this offense could really get hit right now, and it just seems like they're off sync right now. And I think that you can attribute that to not getting the game speed reps during the preseason. I mean, there are looks that Jalen Hurts could have had with AJ Brown. There are looks that he could have had with Dallas Goedert in that first game. There's stuff in the defense when you see some of the missed coverages and stuff like that. Just one little communication here or there off, and next thing you know, we're probably talking to them like we're talking about the Cowboys or the 49ers. So I'm not worried so much right now. Now, say if this was, I don't know, you get to that stretch of death when you face a lot of these better teams in the league, then I'm heading into it. I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm worried, but I'm not right now. I think it's just a lot of it's just rust.
Well, you mentioned that the communication in the secondary, and that's one of my issues with this scheme, because it relies so much on that. You see it when Bradbury's out there. It's pretty good. The Eagles were really good at it until the Super Bowl last year. Some other teams that run the Fangio defense, not so much. And you're starting to see that with the Eagles as the younger players come in. They had that box. I called it that box and no one against Justin Jefferson when 4 players converged on Jefferson, and KJ Osborne just went strolling in the park for a touchdown. You didn't see that kind of stuff last year. I think it's the youth, Goodrich, Job, and that's what young players do. Is there too much stress? Because there's going to be no Avonte Maddox moving forward. Is there too much stress on young players in the secondary with this scheme?
And you mentioned, I think you brought up a good point when it comes to there, because a lot of the stuff is a lot of pre-snap recognition, trying to see what the splits are going in, guessing what those routes are going to happen. And I think that you may see a few hiccups, especially if you have in the middle when at least Josh Jobe had most of the snaps that he got a good feel for early on. He knew he was the starter heading in. And when Goodrich came in, I was like, okay, it took a little bit for him to get acclimated. Like it took a little for him to get acclimated to the speed, and then he got better as the game went on. So I'm looking at when you see this as well too, especially if I'm the Bucs, I'm trying to throw looks that they haven't seen before, stuff that they're not feeling comfortable with, and trying to confound them and sort of look like, okay, no, you guys, because there's times when you see them looking like, oh no, you get this, and then the last second they try to really go try to change the coverage last minute. So I think it's a lot of that youth, and that's why one reason why I would probably put James Bradbury in the slot and maybe use Josh Jobe on the outside, just to depending on the way they line up.
Staying on the defensive side, it was only a couple of weeks ago that they told Nicholas Morrow, thanks for the memories, and sent him packing. He went out, shopped a little bit, couldn't find anybody else that was willing to give him a spot on the roster. So he said, I'll go back to the Eagle practice squad. He's on the practice squad, and before you know it, he's back in the game. He's back in playing. He's got the green dot now because Nakobe Dean continues to be out of the lineup. Is Nicholas Morrow a saving grace for the Philadelphia Eagles, or somebody that could be taken advantage of on the next couple of weeks?
The key is going to be, I think he can if teams continue to pass a lot as much as they've done against this Eagles team, I think he can. The thing I'm worried about is the run game. Because if a team starts seeing that the Eagles start you getting lighter in the box lane, bringing like having him in the middle with the 4 defensive linemen up front, then I'm checking. I'm a quarterback. I'm just going to check. Say, okay, you know, I'm just going to run down the middle because he's a little bit. He's not the prototypical size for there, and I think you can get a lot of yards, chunk yards when you're in the rushing game. When it came to overall the way he played in that last game against the Vikings, I thought he did very well. I like the way that he flowed to the ball. I like the way he was aggressive, and then you saw what he did on special teams. So I think overall, I think you look at that, and I think you for at least 4 to 4. If Nakobe Dean's out, it's either 4 to 6. But if Nakobe's out for 4 weeks, then I think that you can get by with that. If he's out to 6, 7, 8, which I don't think it's going to be the latter, but if it is, that's when I think you really start to see the effects of missing Dean out there on the field.
You piqued my interest by saying you'd go with Bradbury in the slots and Josh Jobe outside. Now, I kind of subscribe to the Jeff Stoutland theory there. Like, why are you going to affect 2 positions if you don't need to? In other words, Bradbury, great player, all-pro player outside. He's not a Bonte Maddox inside. So you're getting worse there. And then obviously Josh Jobe isn't James Bradbury outside. I don't like that. I don't like that. And the second part, Chris, is can you point to another 6'2" nickel corner that's successful in this league? Because I don't get it. I don't get the Bradbury and the slot stuff.
The reason why I do it, especially against this team as well, too, against the Bucs, is that pretty much you're going to have Mike Evans lined up on the left side because all his snaps this year would be either the left side outside, left side in the slot.
Going back to Texas A&M, he plays the
same.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you cut the field in half. All right, great. We know which way he's going to be. But I think especially when you get Godwin in the middle there, I think you're going to go your best on your best. And especially in the nickel spot where you have to worry about so much, where the linebackers are going to drop back, where it's the flat area, the hook, so much stuff. I'd rather have a veteran guy who could potentially be matched up with Godwin a lot because he's played in the slot a little bit more this year. I like that matchup proposed more. And then also you have we've been talking about the younger guys. You have Josh Jobe, especially still trying to get his feet wet. And I think, hey, you know what? Worry about the outside and everything else. And then you can put Mario in there. You can put Mario Goodrich in the middle. I just worry about that matchup, like fresh off thing. Hey, you're starting. Here's Chris Godwin. Go ahead and stop him right now. I just think that the Bradbury one, for the time being, at least this matchup here, gives you a little bit better shot for the time being. Long term, I think it's basically you have to take it matchup by matchup when it comes to that.
All right, Chris Franklin, we surely haven't talked to you since the weekend's action with the Eagles starting it. I want to go with who finished it, and that was the Cleveland Browns, who you guys all got a chance to see this year in the joint practices and the like. Let me give you my scouting report on the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. He's stunk so far this year. He has been flat out bad. It's a good thing that Zach is starting in New York because it keeps Deshaun Watson from potentially being the worst quarterback through 2 weeks in the National Football League. And we all know that the Eagles made a play for Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun wanted no part of coming here. Jalen's one of his boys, and he said, I don't want to take his job. Somebody else is going to give me a job at $150 million. Every penny of it guaranteed. Let me please go elsewhere, which is exactly what he did. Eagles get lucky in dodging the Deshaun Watson bullet, Chris Franklin?
I think if they do win a Super Bowl in this next, as when Jalen Hurts is quarterback, they should send the ring over to Deshaun Watson because making that decision because you look, he deserves that suspension, but ever since that suspension, he has not been the same. No, I don't know if it's been timing. I don't know if he's ahead. It's just it looks disjointed. His decision making looks off at times. The zip on the ball is still there, but that's not all it takes to be a quarterback in this league. So yeah, they got really lucky on that. And you think about Cleveland.
And Russ, by the way. And Russell.
Yeah, Russ, too. Well. Yeah, his cook, whatever he's cooking is giving food poisoning. That's the way it is right now, the way he's playing right now. I'm waiting for Sean Payton to pull the plug on that.
I will defend Deshaun Watson. He's not the second worst quarterback. I mean, we got Bryce Young out there. He's not ready to play. Zach Wilson, Jody mentioned. Justin Fields is just an abysmal disaster in Chicago. Now, I think that's more on the coaching staff, but nonetheless, there's a lot of bad quarterbacks. Desmond Ridder, somehow they're 2-0. I don't know how they're 2-0, but he can't throw. Yeah, there's a lot of bad quarterbacks. Josh Dobbs. I mean, there's a lot of bad quarterbacks.
The thing I look at when it comes to Bryce Young, and especially in Justin Fields, at least you can see like there's reasons why. With Bryce Young, I think you look at it both in both. You look at the offensive line. I think you look at the weapons around him. I mean, he's trying that one. At least there's no excuse. I mean, I look at Amari Cooper. I think he's one of the better. I'm not saying he's top 5, but I think he's one of the better wide receivers in the league. And Njoku, I think, is a decent tight end on there. And he's and they have youth
they do.
Yeah,
Obviously Nick's hurt now, but I mean, he had a great running game as well. If you just woke up today and never watched football before, you'd say Joe Burrow was terrible over the first 2 weeks. Obviously, he's going to get it going. I assume. I hope so, because I picked him to go to the Super Bowl, so I hope so. But he's been terrible. Very small sample size, but yeah, Deshaun Watson has not been the same. And, he had basically a 2-year layoff. Maybe that's a little bit more difficult than people realize. But yeah, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I mean, the Eagles wanted to hire Adam Gase and Ben McAdoo before they got Doug Peterson. I talk about that all the time. Yeah, they lucked out with Russ and Deshaun Watson.
All right, I guess Johnny called me on the carpet, so I'm going to have to apologize to Deshaun Watson. I like passer rating more than John does. I think it's the worst stat possible to evaluate a quarterback, except for every other stat, which makes it the best stat to evaluate every other quarterback. I called him 31st. I apologize. He's 30th. Yeah. Bryce Young is actually worse than he is. So a quarterback who's got 2 NFL games under his belt is worse than Deshaun was. So I guess I need to apologize to Deshaun.
Well, yeah,
and 31st when he's actually earned 30th.
Well,
I did say Zach Wilson was the worst. Did I not? Oh, and he is. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going.
I'll apologize to
Deshaun. I don't know what Justin Fields' passer rating is because I don't pay attention. But Justin Fields is a disaster. Yeah, there's a lot, and Josh Dobbs, like I said, there's a lot of bad
Fields is Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow's been a disaster, but we all know Joe's a good quarterback. I mean, Justin Fields, and you and I both like Justin Fields coming out. So the Eagles did not, luckily for them. The Eagles love Zach Wilson coming out of the draft. So
I never saw it with him. Yeah. I just never saw it with him because he struggled when you look at his throws to the flat area in the short passing game were iffy. Like I just never saw the love for him. He can move around, yeah, sure, but I just never saw the traits where I didn't think like, hey, this guy can be a franchise guy. Hey, this guy's going to hold a Lombardi trophy at the end. So you get that gut feel. You look at the stuff and get that.
I certainly look at it now and say, what are people thinking? But it's some and by the way, look, I say it all the time with Fields, and I loved him coming out of the draft, and I know Jody liked him even more. But at some point, he's 5-22 as a starter, and we talk about wins and losses as not being a quarterback. I'm the first one in that line, but 5-22 is 5-22. At some point, I got to pull the plug. I pulled the plug there, and maybe it's not his fault. It might be Matt Eberflus. It might be Luke Getsy. I think is a terrible offensive coordinator. But, man, if quarterbacks get in bad situations, it really stunts their development. It really stunts their development.
And Fields is a guy that I would really like to see, say, if the Denver Broncos do and find a way to move on for Russell Wilson and somehow get out of contract and just move on. Fields is a guy I would like to see with Sean Payton in that offense because I think it's a lot of safer throws. I think he can coach him up well enough to the fact that because I think when you get a guy like Russell Wilson, you just set new ways. And you're like, oh, I did this beforehand. I had success. I'll listen to some of your stuff, but I know what I'm doing here. I think with Fields, he's still impressionable enough, and he's out a whole new change of scenery. He'll have a good cast of wide receivers out there. I think he's a guy that if he ever, at the end of the season, if, say, the Broncos were to reach out to get him, I think he'd actually do well out there in Denver.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with Chicago is they've tried to, kind of like the Giants a couple of years ago when who was that general manager? Gettleman. He acknowledged we got to improve the offense. I got to get me some hog mollies. We know we got to be better on the offensive line. And he put attention and money and draft picks. He just kept picking the wrong guys. You can understand that you need to improve in an area. It's nice that you figure that out, but then you actually have to get the players. And Chicago's been the same thing with the offensive line. They use a first-round draft pick in the first round. He's not playing like it, not looking like it. So the offensive line has been brutal for Chicago. So
yeah, and by the way, they could have had Jalen Carter twice, and they took that offensive lineman.
Right.
Just a disaster of an organization.
When you pass on Jalen Carter twice and your guy's not ready to step in and be a dominant offensive lineman as a rookie, it's going to look bad on you, Ryan Poles.
And smiled about it, too. We got that 4th-round pick, guys. Yeah.
The Eagles have a great quarterback, but it hasn't looked great in the first 2 weeks, Chris. So I was looking at PFF, and they have Jalen, not graded well, but not poorly. They're not saying he's playing poorly. But the most interesting part is the run game. The run game. We all know the effectiveness, the +1 that Jalen Hurts has given this team. But this year it hasn't been that. Right now, as we speak today, the 2 worst run-graded quarterbacks in the NFL are Jalen Hurts and Tua. Jalen Hurts is almost last. What the hell is going on with the Eagles' run game when it comes to the quarterback? He looks uncertain. What there's no decisiveness. What is going on there?
They're using the linebacker. They're muddying it up, and it's a chess game that's going on. It's like Hurts is holding it like a split second longer to try to draw the linebacker and defense or the edge rusher where they're reading to try to declare which way they're going to go. But then they're also bringing some other guys to muddy it up to make it like, oh no, I'm not going inside. Okay, I'm going to be outside to stop that. I think that's the way they're stopping the zone read. Then you look at the when it comes to like the RPO where he has the RPR or the ones they like to do that as well too. They're adjusting to that. The teams are trying to do that. They're muddying it up in the middle and trying to adjust on that edge to say, okay, we want you to throw towards the outsides. And the opportunities are there. They really are. Like they start to split a little bit. And I think it's one of those things where they needed to go back to the run just a little bit to try to settle things, to try to change the way it looked. I want to see him run more pistol to help him out. But I think if you run more pistol, I think especially do like the midline options, I think you can get more run yards out of that because I think teams are going to have to honor, say, DeAndre Swift in the backfield like a regular running back. They have to honor him in the box. So I think the correction you do right now, I think you go back to 2021 Eagles in a way. You set up the run. You force teams to actually put more in a box, and I think I'll go off of that, go play action, and go deep, and just continue to do that until teams have to readjust again. It's that ebb and flow, and I think we'll see a little bit of adjustments coming up in these next couple of days.
All right, I'll be a dick again. I've done it before, so I'll do it again here. Telling you two guys how to do your job. If I had Nick Sirianni for a question in his next press conference, here's what I would ask him. How badly do you miss your blocking wide receiver? I can't even think of the damn
Zach
guy.
Pascal.
Zach Pascal. How big a hole has Zach Pascal left in your offense, coach, without him here to spring Jalen Hurts on all these running plays? I would do it with tongue somewhat implanted in cheek. But you get my point here, right, Chris? That, yeah, they used to have a guy who used to block on the edge, and he's no longer here. And I don't think that's a Quez strong suit that he's helping get Jalen freed on those plays when he bounces it outside. Is that part of why Jalen Hurts hasn't run the ball effectively? Johnny Mack just told me 31st rushing quarterback in the league.
That's bizarre, man.
That is just unfathomable as far as I'm concerned. There's got to be a reason. No Zach Pascal. What do you say, coach? You go in there, Franklin. That's the question you're asking when next you get in front of the coach.
If I burn that question, everybody's going to look at me and just go like, What
Tell
are
him
you
that
doing,
Jody
man?
McDonald wants to ask Jody.
That
I'm
question.
asking this question for Jody McDonald when everyone
That's-
rolls their eyes there. You can be the judge and
That's
tell him
it.
it's
That's like
the idiot from Birds 365.
That's like burning your question on injury. Chris had to do that.
I have to do that. The first
Yeah.
question is always the toughest one. It's like,
Yeah, man.
all right, yeah, you got to do
Yeah.
it. But no, I think if anything, the one thing when you look at the wide receiver block is the wide receiver screens. I mean, it's not Watkins. I mean, Zacchaeus, when he was in there, he missed a block on a wide receiver screen that could have sprung for a good
What a
7 or 8
shot!
yards.
Wide receivers miss him. I hate that play so much. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. It's ugly. Yeah, every once in a while you'll hit it, but you're asking guys who can't block to block. It's similar to what I said about, it doesn't make sense for me to move an all-pro corner from what he is an all-pro at, and it doesn't make sense to me to ask people who can't block to block consistently. Doesn't make sense to me, but every team does it. It's not just the Eagles. I hate that play.
And it's rough because it's your two best blocking wide receivers, even PFF and everything else, are the guys you want the ball in their hands, and AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. So you can't. It's like, wait a minute. You have a run game; they're really good blockers, but when you want to get the ball in the wide receiver's face, it's like, oh, all right. Well, I guess maybe we got to put Jack Stoll out there and split it. Oh, then you know what's really coming out there. Jack Stoll split out. Watch outside. So you can't do that.
By the way, I think Devontae Smith is the Eagles' best blocking wide receiver, which is amazing. I think he is.
And if that's the case, shame on AJ Brown, because he is certainly more physically capable of doing it. We see it all the time. Devontae and AJ standing next to each other. One looks like a JV player, the other looks like a varsity player. The varsity guy should be able to block better. Come on, AJ, suck it up and get it done if that's the case. Another guy I'm gonna annoy. I'm getting everybody annoyed here today. All right, let's see if we can annoy the Eagle fans. Baker Mayfield, the almost unstoppable Baker Mayfield, the first couple of games so far this year. I didn't see it coming. Good on you, Bake. What are the Eagles going to do to bring Baker Mayfield back to earth, Chris Franklin?
I think you got to bring it. It's tough in a way because the one thing he's spreading the ball around very well, and not just the one part of the field. He's actually spreading the ball around to the point where it's unpredictable. To a point, the biggest thing I know is going to be. It's almost like you got to mush rush him in a way. You got to collapse the pocket, but you just got to get pressure on him to the point where he has to stay in the pocket and just hope he just jump balls and throws it up in that one way. And I look at the way, like we talked about Evans earlier, he's the only one to me that's playing very well. You got to respect Godwin because for who he is, but he's the only one that's really breaking things and deep and making big plays. So it's also one of the things where you want to shift the coverage, shade coverage over this way, or maybe you have Slade travel around with him. But then even you just make sure you get your hands up and mush rush him because he's still deep down. He's still that Baker Mayfield, as you know, has about 2 turnover opportunities in him. He still is. Just you got to pick your spots and take advantage of it when you get the chance. I have to commend him. He's actually done a good job when he's been down here so far his first 2 games.
Yeah, he has played well, but I think you're right. I'm not that concerned about anything on offense other than Mike Evans when it comes to Tampa Bay, but I am concerned with that defense. That defense is better than people realize. I just ran down the run deep. They're unbelievable versus the run, Chris. So I'm not expecting 175 from DeAndre Swift this week. A lot of times
wait a minute. Hold on, John. Let me just interrupt for a second. Of the 2 defenses on the field this Monday night, who's better against the run?
Oh yeah, it's definitely. I'd go still with the Bucs. I'd still go with the Bucs. Vita Vea in the middle is just tough.
I mean, he's I mean, they've been doing it for 5 years. So, I mean, they
first 2 games of the season, number 1 team in the league against the run.
The Eagles have been great against the run, but again, context matters. The Patriots don't have a great running game. The Vikings, Alexander Madison, you don't say more. I feel bad for what Alexander went through, but he's not playing well. Context matters.
Right, but who's Tampa played? Tampa hasn't played a good running back yet either.
Yeah, but they've been doing it for 5 years, Jody. Over 5 years, they played good running backs.
I'm just talking about this season. I'm not talking about over the last 5 years. I'm just saying.
Well, that's a pretty big sample size. But getting back to my original point, Chris, those Thursday games tend to be, they're DNA games, I like to call them, because you can't prep. Nobody practices. You just roll out and you play, and you do what you do well. And the Eagles are a very talented team, and they persevered. Against Tampa Bay, you can game plan. You have extra time. You can really lock down what you want to do. This is the week the passing game's got to get going, right? This is it. This is it. Not that they're bad in the secondary. I love Winfield, but I'm not going to pound my head against the wall and say, "Hey, Jason Kelsey, go move Vita Vea." I'm not doing that. Correct or incorrect?
Yeah. Well, I think the passing game is going to have to be the way they win, and especially if they continue the trend of trying to play everybody deep. Everybody done when they face the Eagles' offense is play everybody deep. You still have to take your shots just to get those safeties, loosen them up. You still have to take your shot. I think I wouldn't be surprised like on that first drive we see a deep shot to AJ Brown, just because of everything that's going on right now. It's just to say Elias and no, he's still an important part of this offense. And when you soften it up, I look at this as well too as an important litmus test for Cam Jurgens. Because when you look at this starts his stretch of hell for him because you go Vita Vea, then Jonathan Allen, then Aaron Donald. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see them trying to shade Vea over that way towards Jurgens' side, test them out and say,
I hope Cam's not listening. I hope Cam's not, because Chris just ruined his day. Yeah.
That's a stretch. That's a tough stretch for him, but we'll see. We'll see if he's ready up for it. And it's a matter of getting inside his pads and trying to be strong. And we're going to see that athleticism that Cam has. And if Vea starts to push that pocket in and starts forcing Hurts around, he can get away. But I think we'll see more of what we saw these first two games than what we've seen last year when it comes to his accuracy throwing.
I asked Mike Gill a question when we had him on about how many games the new Eagles punter will be here for. I'm going to ask you a similar but different question.
Okay.
Who will be returning punts for the Philadelphia Eagles in their fourth game of the season?
Brayton Covey will be
After
back
Monday night, who will be their punt returner?
Brayton Covey.
So he's going to get elevated to the 53-man roster.
I think, yeah, and then just
Davius Street. That's what you're telling me. So at some point, Davius has got to get the Evo because somebody's going to need to be elevated because you can't do the practice squad mumbo jumbo with Britton after this week.
Yep, and then that's where the question is: where do you go light at, and who you let go? And that's going to be tough because you look at some of the candidates.
Anybody away? I can cut like 3 players. We went through that. Why is Contavious Street here? Why is Rashad Penny here? I can get who else? I can get Ricks on the practice squad. Who cares? Why are they worried about the back end of this roster so much?
See, a cornerback like Ricks, I think somebody would try to jump just because it's a position of need, and he flashed that he could be all right. The Street's the one because I look at how many snaps he's gotten in these first few games. It's not that many. And you got Maro Ajomo, who you thinking is going to be good down the line. That's the one between him, maybe one of those offensive linemen, maybe like Lopez, something like that. I think they go that route if anything. But I think Street is one of the ones that you gotta start penciling in if they do it once they do elevate Covey, because Covey just catches the ball. He's the best out of everybody they got when it comes to catching the ball.
You make Justin Evans your Travis Hunter and let him return punt, play in the slot, and play safety, and
your backup kicker too.
Yeah,
you can do it all, man.
Did
More
you
time,
return
man.
any punts in camp this year?
Oh yeah, Justin in preseason games he did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Back there.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was going to be Alameda, but if you're telling me it's going to be Justin Evans, I'll believe you. But I'll tell you this as well.
Oh, it's going to be Covey. Chris is right. It's going to be Covey.
You sure about that?
Well, unless he fumbles again. If he fumbles,
yeah, that's the biggest one. Yeah, if he drops another muffin and gives them a good field position, then that might happen. But he's the scary thing. He's their most sure-handed guy they have back there.
Just an opinion from a non-Eagles beat reporter here. Someone not on the Eagles roster today will be returning punts next week for the Philadelphia Eagles. That they will go down the same exact road that they did with the punter. We can just get a punt returner off the street. Come on, slap him on the practice squad and elevate him on game day.
Yeah, they care too much about ball security to do that. They don't want to bring some,
but they don't care
willy-nilly off
about
the street.
holders for place kicking.
No, evidently they. And by the way, I'm going to be all
Okay.
over them. If Jake Elliott starts missing field goals, I'm going to
Yeah.
kill this team. I'm going to kill this team.
I think Corey Detmer's available if anybody needs him.
MVP of the Eagles. MVP of the Eagles right now. You can make a strong case it's been Jake Elliott.
You can.
Yeah, good.
That is legit. Should be fun for you guys this week after Britton Cuffey goes 3 fair catches and 1 punt return for 2 yards. That's what I'm predicting Britton Covey does this week.
I think but Brent's done a low-key good job on punt returns since about midway through his rookie season. He was like 6th in the league. So good
that the Eagles kept Kentavious Street over him.
Well, that I disagree with.
I
disagree. I don't. By the way, real quick, and at C Franklin News, make sure you follow Chris on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Read them at nj.com. Eagles worked out 6 players yesterday, most notably William Jackson, but they worked out a couple of running backs. I think it was John Kelly, Bryant Koback. Maybe Rashad Penny out the door. I mean, they weren't going to play him last week until Boston had a concussion. So why is he here if they're not going to play him?
I also think they just like having a running back on the practice squad too. I mean, once they let him go and he's in shock, I thought, well, I heard the Colts were interested in him for a while now, and I wasn't shocked when he saw his sign. I was like, there you go, makes sense. But I think they like having that running back. And I mean, we saw Kennedy Brooks on the roster all last year. And let's see, Jason Huntley, well, not Jason Huntley, but the guys, they like to have at least one on the back just in case they need to call him up in case there's another injury. I don't foresee. I think Penny would still stick around, still be inactive once Scott comes back, and Kenny Gainwell comes back. I think he's inactive again. Just he's a good veteran option to have just in case there's an injury. And which pass protecting was a little bit better after that last game, but yeah, look at that. I think it's like to have a young running back on the roster as a just in case they can develop, and then if they don't like what they see, they can move on from that.
I'll give Nick Sirianni credit for the Colts picking up Trey Sermon. He's the guy who kept, he looks great in practice. He kept going back to how great Trey Sermon looked in practice. We go, okay, if you say so, coach. And they end up not cutting him. But he must have looked good for Shane, too, because Shane reached out and picked him up this week. So good luck to you, Trey Sermon. Not happening here in Philadelphia. All right, Chris, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for jumping on with us. The question now will be when we get Chris Franklin, where will he be broadcasting from? Kind of like
might be Tampa.
Where's Chris Franklin broadcasting?
So depending on his travel itinerary, it might be Tampa. It might be the golden beaches of Tampa. Who knows?
It might be a Tampa airport. I got an early flight.
All right, do us a favor. You got
Starbucks there.
You got short sleeves on today. Give us one flex before you go.
Oh, you want the flex right there? Yeah, you'll go right for it. Yeah, we got that.
Sun's out.
Ready to hit.
Sun's out, guns out for Chris.
Ready to hit something right now.
CF, we'll talk to you again soon, brother. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. You have a good one now. See you.
Franklin, live from his bathroom. He says it's not his bathroom, but I think he could be lying to us.
No, come on. No, it's not his bathroom.
I think it is. I think he had it sitting up right there on the sink, and it was a good shot behind him. He said, let's go with this. McMullen, McDonald coming back. We still got one more segment on Birds 365.